There's a new twist in the great power game that's currently playing out across Africa. Somaliland has offered the US a military base and access to critical minerals. What's the catch, you ask? Well, it wants formal recognition as an independent state. Here's the deal. Somaliland, which is strategically perched by the Red Sea, declared independence from Somalia. This was in the year 1991. And while the US acknowledges Somalia's claim to the territory, Somaliland president is lobbying Washington hard to support its semi-autonomous status and recognition. And in doing so, it effectively joins the wider competition that is underway in Africa for US President Donald Trump's attention, as Washington basically competes with China for the strategic resources there. So the Somaliland president, who came to power last year, said that the talks with the US Embassy in Somalia and the Department of Defense are aimed at securing a new partnership on economic cooperation, security and counter-terrorism. Somaliland, despite 3 decades of peace and a functioning government, remains unrecognized by the world. And now its president is making this bold pitch: a US military base and a deal on critical minerals like lithium in exchange for recognition or, at the very least, deeper ties. And according to reports, he has confirmed ongoing talks with the US Embassy in Somalia and the Department of Defense. While Somalia continues to battle civil war and Islamist insurgents, Somaliland has largely remained peaceful, an argument that the region's leaders say strengthens their case. In fact, the UAE already runs a port at Berbera and a nearby airstrip, both used for military logistics. The US could follow, especially amid the rising Red Sea tensions fueled by the Houthi attacks and the Gaza war. And interestingly, this offer also comes at a time when President Trump has been courting African leaders, remember, as the US and China wrestle for access to Africa's rich mineral resources. Somaliland does not yet produce lithium, but has granted exploration licenses to foreign firms. It also sits on reserves of gold and other valuable resources. The Somaliland president insists that the US cooperation is not conditional on formal recognition, but has also made it clear that Somaliland will not accept any parallel administration by Somalia. He also warned Mogadishu against any attempts to undermine Somaliland's autonomy, stating, and I'm quoting now, "We are a peace-loving nation, but we are capable of defending our territory," quote unquote. And as America recalibrates its Africa policy, Somaliland is offering both leverage and location. But whether the US is ready to redraw the maps in the Horn of Africa remains to be seen. Switching focus for now, sensational details have surfaced in a UK's child sexual exploitation scandal. It has now come to light that women abused when they were children by the gangs were also reportedly sexually assaulted by some police officers. UK media reports, including The Guardian and the BBC, have reported that 5 women survivors have reportedly claimed that they were raped by police officers after being abused by the grooming gangs as children. One survivor said a serving officer assaulted her in a police car and then threatened to hand her back to the gang if she did not comply. Some of these assaults reportedly took place when the girls were as young as 12 years old. Reports also mentioning that they have seen written accounts from these women and testimony from 25 other victims of grooming gangs. Some of those women have reportedly said in their testimonies that corrupt police officers worked alongside the gangs or failed to act on child sexual exploitation. South Yorkshire Police has arrested 3 former officers as part of a widening criminal investigation. At least 1,400 children were abused by men between 1997 and 2013, as per the landmark report. In fact, while South Yorkshire Police is leading a criminal probe into the actions of its own officers, advocates are saying that public trust can only be restored if an outside force takes over the case. Over dinner during President Donald Trump's visit to Scotland, the Scottish First Minister pressed Trump to reconsider the 10% tariff on Scotch whisky, a levy that has basically been costing the sector an estimated $5 million every week. And with the US being Scotland's single largest whisky market, the tariff has raised alarm across distilleries. The Scottish First Minister argued that the whisky trade is not one-sided, with the Scotch and bourbon industries sharing a $400 million cask trade and close production links. Despite criticism from within the party, the Scottish First Minister defended his meeting with Trump, calling it essential to protect and promote Scottish interests. He described Trump's position as having shifted, with the US president now showing a willingness to revisit the tariff, something that the Scottish First Minister claimed was not the case just days earlier. In fact, the talks continued the next day as Trump opened a second golf course, where the Scottish First Minister also met with US Ambassador. While Scotch was top of the trade agenda, the two sides, in fact, the Scottish First Minister and the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, also raised the Gaza crisis at the dinner. The Scottish First Minister urged Trump to push for a ceasefire, citing his influence over Israeli leadership.